Women's Rights Without Frontiers is an international coalition to combat forced abortion, sex-selective abortion, and sexual slavery in China, although we are hoping to branch out into India if we have the resources in the next year, because they are suffering from gendercide as well. The one-child policy is enforced in a very uneven manner. So there are differences in different areas of the country. So the same woman who gets pregnant without a birth permit, which would be an illegal pregnancy, in one area of the country would be allowed to pay a fine, and in another area of the country would be forced to have an abortion. And similarly, it can vary even within a place depending on the time. 1 year, if the authorities are meeting their abortion quotient, she can get away with a fine, and then the next year, if they're having a Strike Hard campaign, she will end up with a forced abortion. So it's very uneven and very arbitrary in its enforcement.
Is that almost like an official form of sanctioned bribery, do you call it?
Well, you could say that because the one-child policy generates a huge amount of money for the Chinese Communist officials. Because if you get pregnant without a birth permit, the fine can end up being up to 10 times a person's annual salary. And of course, most people cannot afford to pay that, so most people end up with a forced abortion. The Chinese Communist Party has boasted that it has prevented 400 million births since the inception of the one-child policy. That is a greater number than the entire population of the United States and Canada combined. And this is the hallmark of communist regimes, which is the peacetime murder of their own citizens. And in terms of improvement, I'm really glad that you asked that question, because every couple of years, the Chinese Communist Party will tweak the policy. They will make a minor modification, and most of the Western media, yourself excluded, will report that as China abandons the one-child policy. They made a minor modification at the beginning of this year, but it has not ended the coercive nature of the enforcement of the one-child policy. So no, I have not seen any sizable improvement.
Did the remark by Vice President Joseph Biden that he understood the policy hurt your efforts?
I think the comment by Vice President Biden that he understood but did not second guess China's one-child policy actually helped our efforts. In the sense of when he made that comment, there was such an explosion of outrage from everyone that all the presidential candidates were almost stumbling over each other about who could condemn him the worst, and the White House itself backtracked and quote-unquote clarified his comment, which was really a retraction. And I found that very heartening, because if somebody had said something like that 5 years before, when our efforts had not really gotten off the ground, it would have gone by unnoticed. So the level of reaction against it was something I found very heartening.
What about in China? How do ordinary Chinese people feel about the one-child policy?
I think that there is a division of opinion within China, the Chinese people, and within the government itself. I think that there are many in the government who would like to see this end, even just for demographic reasons. The one-child policy is driving gendercide, the sex-selective abortion of baby girls, which in turn is driving human trafficking and sexual slavery. And also, China is growing old before it grows rich. So they've got this aging population that is zooming up, and meanwhile they do not have a young population to sustain it. So there are many who would like to see it end for demographic reasons. However, if you challenge them on the basis of human rights and say you are forcibly aborting women, and this is an abrogation of human rights, that is what will get you in trouble with the Chinese Communist Party.
What have you learned about this subject that has shocked you the most?
Well, the first time that I testified before Congress, this was back in 2009, my organization uncovered a document which I called Best Practices Infanticide. Now, infanticide is the killing of infants. And what this was is it was an email train on the official website of the Chinese Communist Party's obstetricians and gynecologists. And what they were discussing was how best to kill infants who were being born alive during late-term forced abortions. And it was a very frank discussion. I mean, I can tell you the procedures that they used to make sure that that baby is born dead.
And they recognized it was a baby, it sounds like, because of the difficulty involved.
Well, this is the thing. under Chinese law, at least at that time, this is in 2009, I don't think it's changed. What they were emphasizing is the baby must be born dead, because if it's born alive, then it has the rights of being a baby or a child. So this is how you make sure that it's born dead. So yes, there was a recognition that this was a baby, that this was a child, that if it had come out 1 minute later alive, it would have had rights. And so they very graphically and meticulously in medical language described exactly what you do to kill this child before so they will never see the light of day. That was shocking to me.
What can ordinary people do to help?
We have a campaign called Save a Girl. We have a network of field workers on the ground in China, and we have contacts in the community so that we find out if a woman has had an ultrasound, knows she's carrying a girl and plans to abort her, or if she's given birth to a girl and plans to abandon her, or if she is suffering from such horrible poverty that the life of her daughter is threatened. We will go to her door, we will say, please do not abort, please do not abandon your baby because she's a girl. She's a precious daughter, and we will give you a monthly stipend for a year to empower you to keep this daughter. And we've had a tremendous success rate. We have saved over 100 baby girls already, and this is a way that people can help. They can go on our website and click on the Save a Girl campaign and contribute to this, and that will help save lives in China.
Right. These are the people you're working with in China. You can't get into the country yourself, correct?
No, I cannot get into the country of China myself, and neither can any other Chinese human rights activist that I know of. What I have just said in this interview, and almost everything I talk about, would be considered to be a state secret in China, because they don't acknowledge that they forcibly abort women. So I would get in the same kind of trouble that, for example, the blind activist Chen Guangchen, who exposed the fact that there were 130,000 forced abortions and forced sterilizations in just his city in just 2005, went to jail, tortured, denied medical treatment, etc. That's the kind of trouble he got into. If I went to China, the nicest thing they would do to me would be just send me right back. But it would be very foolish for me to go to China at this time.
And just in closing, tell us where you're based and how you got involved in this.
I'm an attorney. I practiced complex commercial and intellectual property litigation, and I found out about the coercive enforcement of the one-child policy because I represented a Chinese refugee on her asylum case, and she had been forcibly sterilized. This was in the mid-90s, and at that point I knew China had a one-child policy, but I did not know that it is currently enforced through forced abortion, forced sterilization, and even infanticide. So it's a long story, but I got very sick and had to leave the legal profession on a medical leave of absence, and then just had this sort of life-transforming experience where I came out of that saying, I want to dedicate my life to the women and the children of China. And at one point, my husband and I sold our home and put down money to help with this whole endeavor to raise the visibility of this issue. And so I've committed my life to this.
That's wonderful. Reggie Littlejohn, thank you so much for your time and for your efforts.